How are you?
I am good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. May I ask you please to tell us your name and share anything about yourself you feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. My name is Sallie Wright, and I am a information technology executive and have been for many, many years. And when I started out as an IT executive, I was always the only woman at the table,
Mhm.
um, always. Um, and over the past 100 years, I have had an amazing career. And I want to say for the last 10 years, I've been really focusing on giving back and helping others with their careers. Um, and I mentor students from the graduate programs at Georgia State University, and I serve on a lot of different boards. And especially my favorite one is called Inspire EDU, which is used to be called Power My Learning, and it is a board that was originally set up as a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or through them, to provide for the digital divide. And so this organization takes laptops from companies that are obsolete, and they refurb them and put gamification on there to help the kids that can't afford computers and internet connectivity to be able to participate at the same level that other kids can. And I find that very rewarding. So
That's
that's
wonderful.
a little bit about me.
That absolutely sounds wonderful. So, what part of the country are you in? Are you north, east, south, west?
Currently living in Atlanta, Georgia,
Okay.
and very, very active in the technology community here in Atlanta, and spend a lot of time meeting people and helping them with their careers.
That's an amazing thing. Thank you so much for that, Sally, because as you said earlier, it's very often we go to the meetings and we're the only person that looks like us, or sometimes
Yes,
we're over talked, so people try to mute us so we don't get our point across. And I'm so glad you've been able to break through that and make change for people that are coming in, specifically women and people of color who are
yes,
coming into the field.
yes.
So
I serve on the Diversity and Inclusion Board for the Technology Association of Georgia. Been doing that since about 2013. I was nominated for an award, and I should be disappointed that I didn't win, but I made top five, and the person who won ran diversity and inclusion worldwide for AT&T. And T.
mhm,
And all I was doing was making life better for about 250 IT people at Georgia State University.
yep. I mean,
So
the fact that you were nominated is a blessing in of itself, and you can always
it
talk about
is.
that credential. And I'm sure that there are people who would see the value of what you're doing and include you and nominate you for greater awards.
So yesterday I spent part of my day going through the nominees for the award for this year, and you can't believe all the great things that are happening in Atlanta to really promote diversity, inclusion, equity, and culture. So I love it. I think it's great.
It really is. A lot of times I vent my frustration on LinkedIn, about diversity. It's one of those overused words, overused
Yes.
topics. People are always talking about diversity. They go out and they hire a diversity officer and they don't
Mhm.
empower that person to be able to affect change that really
Right.
results in diversity. And to me, diversity is, not just persons, but it's the diversity of actions, of ideas, your thoughts, and people. It can't just be one or the other. A lot of the times I talk about here when Google first attempted their facial recognition software, right? So because there was limited diversity in the room and in the process of designing this tool, you had software where every time it saw a person that wasn't of a certain pigment, it put up a picture of a gorilla. And
Oh.
as I tell people this, Google is a fascinating company. They do amazing things. So there's nothing about that I believe Google did intentionally. It's just
Right.
that, when you don't have diversity, your outcomes are often skewed one way or the other.
Right.
So there's that. And it's wonderful to hear what you're doing. So
Right.
how did you get to this place? So what was your process to go from when you first began your career in IT to where you are today? Can you describe that for us a little bit?
So I've been really fortunate in that I started as a computer programmer, and in 2 years, I was the CIO.
Wow.
So I am. I was really fortunate. I worked in an environment where it was diverse.
Mhm.
So, diversity in Oklahoma is different than diversity here in Atlanta. You know, a lot of American Indians and um, very, very diverse, but it was great. So I've always been an executive since I was 21. I've been an IT executive. And so as I moved along the career path, I always learned more. And in my first CIO role, I remember being sent to New York to a IBM conference for IT. Back then they didn't call us CIOs, they called us IT managers. Um, and it was me, the only woman in the room, and we were tested, and I outscored all the men.
That's-
So I thought that was really cool because they were old guys, you know what I mean? Um, so as I progressed, I just always learned as much as I could. I read, I go to all the conferences I can fit in, and I just try to know as much as I can know. I mean, I've met some amazing people, and here in Atlanta, you know, this is the first place I've ever lived where I had female executive friends.
yeah.
Because everywhere else that just didn't exist. Here that exists. And they're all different colors and makes and models and very diverse, old, young, black, white, everything that you can imagine from a diversity perspective.
That's wonderful to hear that. Would you agree that your path to where you are now is not typical of women in IT?
Absolutely.
Why do you think, well, you talked a little bit about, the different places, but why do you think that women still are struggling with leadership? And I can tell you, I'm one of those women that are struggling, no matter what I've done over my career, it doesn't result in me being a CIO. And I've been told by, I don't know how many people that I'm not CIO material, I'm not CTO material, whatever it is, I get this feedback. And I always wonder, what does that mean when someone says that? Because I take it that there must be something wrong with me. There must be some failure in my person. No matter how many accomplishments I've done, I must not have the right qualifications. And is it simply because I'm a Black female?
Oh, no, that doesn't have anything to do with it, I don't think. I think that I grew up not knowing that men were supposed to be better than women. My father said you cannot pump your own gas. However, you can be the governor of Oklahoma. So I didn't really know that there was, and I never actually considered that they were that the other, that the other gender was smarter or anything like that. I've always just been very direct and outspoken, and um, so moving into management roles was just how it happened so fast. I was really, really young, and I remember having to dress old,
Yeah, yeah,
because if you didn't dress old, then you were going to deal with issues that you shouldn't have to deal with in the workplace. And I always made sure that I never dated anybody I worked with, because
absolutely.
it's a bad idea to date. But as you're thinking about why you personally haven't made it to the CIO role, I would encourage you to consider buying the book Strength Finders 2.0,
I,
and take that and see what your top 5 strengths are. It could be eye-opening for you on things um, that are skills that you would want a CIO to have, that maybe you just need to work on them.
I did the Strength Finder with a group about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've gotten the latest book as well. I've done the emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
and I don't know what the criteria is. I mean, what is the piece that when someone says I'm looking for a CIO or I'm looking for a CTO, here's what I'm looking for. I think that is subjective to each company, and I can say, in these chats I've done and over my 40 plus year career, I've talked to a lot of women. and few have had your track record. Few have gotten to where they
Yeah.
are, you know, just because, and these are white women,
Yeah.
Asian women, all different types of women who you would think would be a part of the natural order, but they have struggled with it as well. One of a CSIO from one of the universities up north came and did a talk at my university, and she introduced us to this new word. It was he. Now she is a CISO, meaning she's in charge of
Hmm.
security for her organization,
Right.
and she's in a meeting, and when she says something, it doesn't become an idea or a thought until a man echoes it or reinforces it. And when you do strive to make your voice heard, you're considered aggressive, passive aggressive. You're doing something to malign the organization. You're not allowed to have a thought of your own, a view of your own. And in my mind, I encounter that every single day. I sit back and I wonder, what is this world that we're growing, specifically in STEM, because these are the things that are going to lead and drive our future, economic future, for years to come.
So I would encourage you, if you're working in a um, organization where your views aren't um, encouraged, that you're working at the wrong place.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at my resume, I have worked a lot of places. I'm a builder. I go in and I build for 3 years and then I change jobs because as a builder, they don't like you.
Right.
I mean, you're not popular. You have changed their worlds and they don't like you.
Right.
And one of the reasons I think I have been successful is because I take risk. You know, I'm probably one of the only people you will ever meet in your life who has, on more than one occasion, actually 3 times, I had a team where I was the only white person, and I had a team of American Indians. Then I worked in Miami, and my whole team was from third world countries, and they were Hispanic. And then I worked for the government here in Atlanta for one of the counties, and 85% of my staff was Black. So um, I'm willing to take risk.
And
And
I think that other women are too, but as you described your career, which is, I think, is outstanding, and let me applaud you for that. It's an amazing career for what you've
thank you.
described. I'm very, very happy that I know you and happy that you've had that success.
Thank you.
When you're a woman of color and you don't, your leadership doesn't see your value, right? Your leadership doesn't recognize. And I think you're spot on. Maybe you're at the wrong company, but you don't know what, the old saying, out of the fire and out of the frying pan and into the fire. You're afraid to take that risk because you don't know what's going to happen. And in my case, so I have a family. I have a son that has a health issue. So I've been trying to be stable to protect my
Mhm.
family and where I am. I did not come from a family of wealth. I grew up very, very poor, very, very
So did
rural,
I.
and I will say, in the end, I've been more afraid to take risks because I don't know what the consequences are of that risk that I take. Now, like you described, my early career, I started out as a computer operator. A couple of years later, I was a programmer, then I was a network manager, and then I was a manager. And I've been a manager just about ever since. And I moved up. I've lived in every state on the East Coast, from the top to the bottom. But that did not garner me anything like you just described, because I too am a builder. I'm a collaborator. My
Yeah.
greatest strength is connecting people together. That's what I do.
Me too. We have a lot in common. We
Yep.
do.
And
I would
so,
encourage you to think about getting an executive coach.
eh,
Yeah, seriously, I have a friend that came up to me. I was hosting a CIO CISO event here in Atlanta, and this lady came up to me and she says, "Sallie, will you mentor me?" And I've never met her before, and she's like, "Sallie, will you mentor me?" And I'm doing it for her. I'm helping her.
excellent.
Um, and she is an African American female who has these amazing skills, but she's never been able to make that leap.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you to either get a mentor or hire an executive coach, someone who can help you talk through where you are and where you want to be and how to get there.
Yeah.
In my current role, that's what I do. I help CIOs and CISOs, because I was a CISO too, get from point A to point B. And we think about, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
there are some of us that might think, oh, I want to be retired. But then there are people who think, I want to be retired, but I want to be on some boards. I
Right.
want to have an income stream from boards, or I want to retire, but I want to give back. So I want to mentor students, or I want to mentor a startup, or,
Yep.
and I would also encourage you to network. Just network like crazy. Anything you can go to it.
And
Um,
and excuse me for interrupting, but I want to say there is my network is probably 5 or 6 thousand people in all ranks across the entire world. I have people all
mhm,
over the world. But what I found is, there's this phrase called skin in the game, right? So who's gonna put their skin in the game for you? So what I have been able to do for my career is do that for women that are coming behind me. you
yeah,
know I don't serve as an executive anywhere, but I mentor, I advocate. I find more people jobs than anyone ever even considering me for a job. I tell
that's
people,
fabulous.
think about your resume, think about what it is, just what you said. Where is it that you want to go? So one of the things I've learned as a manager over time, if you were a programmer over here and you want to be something over here, you can't submit that programmer resume because it doesn't meet the criteria.
Right,
So you,
right.
you have to rewrite your resume, and you also have to be very specific. And I gave a talk a couple of years ago at a conference, and we were talking about this very thing. And a white guy in the back of the room stood up and he said, "I will tell you how to get around ATS, application tracking system." He says, "Take the entire job and copy it and paste it in the bottom of your resume. It gets through every time," which is a
That's
great hack.
funny.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
great hack, but
it
it
is.
doesn't work for everyone. It's not ideal because organizations that are successful and making moves in the marketplace, they receive 5 or 6 thousand resumes for one job. They're
Yeah,
overloaded with applicants, so they now have to kind of flush that out. So I've heard a lot of people say, go through a search agency, don't apply for the job right out, or if you know someone in the company, reach out to them and make that connection. But
yes.
unfortunately, there's not a lot of Sallie Wrights in the world. Now, if you could tell us that we can go find a well of Sallie Wrights, we might be onto something. But in reality, it's harder for many of us. And I don't think it's, race necessarily. I think it's just, getting up the confidence to risk, put your
Put yourself
foot
out there.
on the branch and see if you make it to the other end of the plank, right?
Yeah,
Because like you don't know. And if you are in a situation where you're trying to grow, so these young women and people of color that are coming up, they need to, substantiate themselves. They need to make a point that the company sees value in them. But how do
yeah,
you do that when you are considered? So I love what you said earlier about, being a risk taker. You don't keep your thoughts to yourself, you make your thoughts known and plain. But if you can imagine me doing that at a predominantly white university or a predominantly white organization, that isn't going to go over well. So one of the things that happened when I was at Carolina, so my boss hired me sight unseen on the phone, right? So he was
that's
coming
cool.
from Stony, Rochester, somewhere up there. I can't remember the university was, but he was he was chief medical officer, chief information officer at there, and he was coming here to the School of Medicine to kind of lead their efforts, right? And so one of the things I watched in his style as he was going about his career was he was very forthright and very assertive, not aggressive, but assertive. And coming from the north to the south, a lot of Southerners took that as an affront, right? So they want you to be more humble and more, I don't know what the correct word is, but something that you can't be that upfront. This was a white man, a brilliant white man. He served as the CIO for CDC. He's done some amazing things. John Hopkins. So, he had been everywhere. So brilliant, brilliant man. But his style did not fit naturally
Right.
with his organization. And so, as a person of color or someone new in your career, how do you navigate that branch of what I should be doing versus what I want to do, or I want to say, or how I want to make myself known?
So I would say in today's world, what you really have to consider is LinkedIn, because you need to brand yourself. So in LinkedIn, I had a friend that he was my teaching assistant when I was teaching cyber classes at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. And and he went and worked for the government, and then wanted to start his own company. And I'm like, okay, you have to go, you have to be on LinkedIn, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And so he goes and he has a picture made, and he's got it ready, and he's so excited. He calls me, says, will you go look at it? And I can look at it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you cannot use that picture. I said, she was really pretty photographer, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And he says, yes, she was. I said, well, it shows on your face. You got the come hither look. This is not going to work. I'm not referring anybody to you till you go get a picture made, and you get it made by some dude,
Yeah. Yeah.
not a beautiful woman. And so my point is that LinkedIn is so important. Had another young man call me, and he said, will you take a look at my resume and my LinkedIn? And I go to his LinkedIn, and he's like this. And I'm like, dude, no, you have to smile and make people think you're not mad and that you're open. You just have to do that. And then also branding yourself at work and how you dress. And I'll tell clients, sometimes I'll say, I had one that wanted to move up the chain, and I went and I visited him, and he was dressed like he was getting ready to mow the lawn. And I'm like, you can't dress like this. You have to dress a little bit better than everybody else. Just a little bit, not a whole bunch, but a little bit. And you have to dress like you're already in that new position.
Yeah.
And but then back to the LinkedIn, that LinkedIn profile needs to show that you are out there, that you are giving back, that you are the kind of person that the company would want, either to be on the board or to be hired. So that, whether you believe it or not, it's incredibly important that your LinkedIn profile reflect who you want to reflect. Um, because that's where they go anymore. They don't even ask for the resume.
I
You know,
think
they
I think you're spot on, but I would say that I still find that that's not proof point, if you will, for some people. So on my LinkedIn, massive network, I have a group in LinkedIn called Technology and Education. I have 36,000 members in a group that I
wow,
created and I
that
manage.
is so cool.
And I posted something about it today, 36,000 plus strong, and
Mhm.
we have some guidelines about joining the group. You can't join the group. You're a marketer or you're selling something.
Right.
It's really to have discussions about how technology impacts education. And so, I think I may have created this group maybe 5 years ago. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it's been a minute. And I think that, your point about the picture is good. My LinkedIn picture is me playing golf at Duke. I'm on the greens at Duke.
Uh,
People always say, the first thing I get is when are you free to play? When can we go
uh,
play around?
that's great.
And I always
Uh,
think to myself, yeah, no, I don't think that's what it is. Because did you probably remember there used to be a time business was done on the golf course. It wasn't done, through social
right.
media or, all these other things. It was like the social relationships you built were the things that got you to the next place. So
Right.
playing
Right.
golf seemed like a reasonable thing to me, but that had worked for me. And I think what I want you to hear from me is like all of this you are saying is absolutely right. You're 100% on, but the formula is not one size fits all. Every person has to kind of navigate his or her,
So
their model of who they are, because it doesn't make sense for people to just say, okay, well, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to go have myself professionally photographed, I'm going to put a great LinkedIn career out there, I'm going to upload my CV, I'm going to put all these things, I'm going to post, and the only social media I belong to is LinkedIn. I don't have any other accounts. But as I look at
cool.
what's out there, I look at how people talk. And one of the things I advise, especially young people, is delete your Facebook, your Instagram, your whatever else you got, because as an employer, we look to see what you're saying and what you're doing. So if you're going to use your
Right.
social media to promote yourself, it should be in line to what you're hoping to accomplish. Now, if you're looking for someone to date, or if you're looking for something else, then post whatever you wish to post. But if you're really trying to plot your career path, as you said, LinkedIn is a great way, keeping
Right.
your information up to date, making posts, occasionally just to say something to keep people abreast of what's happening with you and my diversity chats, so I mean, they get hundreds of reviews when I put them up, and people say all kinds of things to me about them, but they haven't led to the place I want to be. And I'm not bothered by it anymore. I've come to accept it. I'm not, feeling some kind of way about it. I think it's just one of those things where I don't believe for some groups there is a one size fits all.
So I would encourage you to reach out to one of my friends. Her name is Tia Buckham White, and she started her own company called Notre International. And she helps people with culture circles, like she does work for Delta and other huge organizations. She's probably one of the best speakers in the world. I mean, just absolutely wonderful. She does a presentation on the baggage you bring with you. That you would absolutely love Tia. She's beautiful on the outside and the inside. So I would encourage you to talk to her. She serves on that board I mentioned before about diversity and inclusion. But on that board, we also have people who are Hispanic or Asian or old or young or veterans or LGBTQ, or I mean, we just cover the whole gamut of um, of of diversity and inclusion because it's not just a race thing; it's a whole bunch bigger than that. And to not recognize that sometimes I worry because a lot of times our HR departments only think of it as you're black or you're white. Well, no, there's a lot of other things that go into that equation, and I just think it's important to meet people who can help you and who share the same kind of ideas and want to see the world get better
Yeah,
and want us to work together and collaborate and learn from each other. And because learning is not a one-way street. It's, I learn as much from my students as they learn from me.
right.
And I learn as much from my clients today as they learn from me. So it's I think it's important to just keep trudging along and you know, um, I mean, there's a lot of ways to get where you want to go,
Yep. Yep.
and a lot of it has to do with who you know, not what you know,
Yep.
because the best person for the job is not who usually gets the job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So correct. So let me ask you a question. In the world of COVID, where we are right now, lots of companies and organizations are moving to remote work. So what we're doing, a Zoom call or whatever it is,
Mm.
companies are actually rethinking their in place face-to-face work to moving more to digitally work, working from home or
Right.
meeting or whatever you want to say. How do you see that in the diversity scheme? So so now I may or may not meet you in person if I'm applying for a job, or I may not know, you know, all the ins and outs of your organization, since I don't have a chance now to go and see what the building looks like, see how people are pushed together or moved apart in the space. How do you see that in this current climate?
So I think that one of the best things you can do for yourself when you're looking for a new job is to interview the company, because if it's not a culture fit, you don't want to go there. I
Right.
had a young man that was a CIO, and he wanted to change jobs, and so we did a marketing strategy for him. Where do you want to live? Well, I want to live in a major metropolitan area. Well, what do you like about major metropolitan areas? I like food. I'm a foodie. I like international food. I like all kinds of food. And then, and I want to live somewhere where there's diversity, because he was from, I think he was from Iran and or Iraq, Iraq maybe. Anyway, so he calls me a few weeks later and he says, "Sallie, I got an offer to go to North Dakota." And I said, "Did you go there?" And he said, "Yes, I did." And I said, "Well, was it major metropolitan?" And he said, "No, it's pretty rural." And I said, "Well, did they have great restaurants there?" And he said, "No, I don't remember great restaurants." I said, um, "Did you look around? Did anybody look like you?" And he said, "No, nobody did." I said, "You might want to pass on this. I know it's a compliment that you got a job offer for it, but that's not what you were looking for. So it's going to be short-lived if you go there." So my point is that you really have to think about in advance where you want to live and how you want your life to be outside of the job. But if you don't check out the culture, you could end up in a position where you're not happy and you don't fit. I know I worked in a place where um, I didn't know what bless your heart meant. I did not know that it was being told the F word to your face. Um,
Absolutely.
I had no idea, and when I learned that, I thought, "Oh, I picked the wrong place. This is not good. This is not good. This is not good." Such shallow people that are just there to hurt you, and it's just not a fit for me. It was like being in high school again, but you weren't the pretty smart cheerleader anymore. You were like that ugly redheaded stepchild thing going on. So knowing the culture, you can do a lot on researching that through Glassdoor.
Yeah.
But if you can find somebody you know that knows somebody who works there that can give you the skinny, um, you really want to do that. Now, here in Atlanta, we are like a haven for Black professionals. Okay. This is where you want to live if you're a Black professional. Absolutely. This is the place. So, as you're thinking about what your next steps are, you might want to think about if this is an option. It's 50% Black here.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, all kinds of wonderful networking and, um, it's just a fantastic place. Uh,
I appreciate that, but I want to be clear about one thing. I'm not just talking about. I use myself as an example, but I'm
mhm,
just talking generally for people that
okay.
are like me. And one of my maybe shortcomings is I am old. So I'm not
I
20.
am old. I don't mind.
I'm not 20 anymore, and I don't think I have the capacity to tolerate a bunch of nonsense. So
Yeah.
if you're not if so you hire someone into a job and you don't allow that person to do the job, you micromanage them, you stand on top of them all the time. You have to be the person that gets all the glory. You have to be the person that gets your name in lights.
Yeah. That's when I changed jobs.
Right. So,
I'm not working for a micromanager.
right. And so,
Uh,
and if they force that down your throat and you have that inherent fear of what could possibly happen, am I going to be able to provide for my family? Am I going to be able to do X, Y, and Z? It's one of those things where you have to really just take a step back and ask yourself exactly what you said. Is this the right place for me? So do some research on this, to find out who the companies are. And then the thing that you said that really, stands out for me. So I call it create a community, right? So people call it networking. Now, I don't know what that means other than going somewhere and having a drink or something. That's not my idea of networking, but creating a community of people that are in your space, that believe in you, that support you, that can give you advice, that can counsel you, that can kind of lead you through the different challenges as you're in your workforce. So, I think that in a lot of ways, it's kind of one of those things where when you start out, whether you're in high school, college, wherever you are, start building your community. So one of the things as a college advisor, we tell students to create a network, and the network are your professors, the people who you see every day, your peer students. But creating that community, and I think you said this, splendidly, is what actually gets you to those levels that you want to go to, the
yes.
creating levels. But if you and like me, I'm an introvert, so I am not the most outgoing person in the world. So I am more likely to wait for somebody to say something to me than me say something to them. But even with that said, if you have a community who knows you, who knows what you have done, how you have changed the game. So I think if we could all have a Sallie Wright, in
Oh,
our lives, with us every day, we may get to where we want to go. But what you may or may not know, that there are a lot of people who are afraid for you to advance because it may mean they don't advance, or it may mean that they get something that you don't get. So, you need someone who is outgoing and willing to put their neck on the line for you. And
yes.
and finding that is it's almost like dating, right? So how do you find the right mentor? How do you find the right advocate? You've got to, go through a couple of them. What is the old saying? You got to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince. So that kind of thing. And it's the same thing too with finding someone to help you to that next space.
I know. And to your point about the people that are afraid that you're going to be ahead of them. I actually had an employee that not only was afraid that you were better than them, um, but that actually did everything in their power to make sure you weren't successful because they wanted your job
Right.
and they did everything that they could. And I don't want to hang out with people like that. Shame on me once, but it won't happen again. I mean, so, you know,
I think your body of work is outstanding. I think what you
thank you.
said here today is just simply outstanding. I think that you have traversed the rocky climb to Mount Everest. You have climbed, and you can stand on a mountain and raise your hand. I think that what's really important about, if people listen to this and hear what you're really saying, is it's really important to pay attention to your own career. Find the places
Yeah.
who fit, find the places who are supportive of you, find the people who believe in you. And if you're in a place where you are undermined either by your boss or your peers or the people that report to you, you either need to think about changing jobs or to be willing to, accept that that's what you're going to get and be okay with it and be quiet about
Right.
it. You can't be fussing about it because you haven't,
I
gotten.
would I would say to be good to each other. I mean, inherently, they've always said that we as women were were mean to each other and that we didn't support each other. And I think if there was one thing I could go back and change, it would be that perception that we don't support each other because we are fantastic.
Yes,
As
we are.
we are absolutely fantastic. We can multitask better than anything.
Right.
In fact, one of my quotes is probably not too positive, but I say a single mother does more work before she goes to work than others do all day long. And you
Absolutely.
have to be so coordinated on what you're going to feed them and what they're going to wear and when they're going to be picked up and about their sports and uh, are there shoes, all these things. And so we as women, we are we are the majority, and we should be more prevalent in our destiny. And we should be standing up, and we should be making sure that um, we are helping each other,
Yeah.
and that we are making a positive impact on those around us. Um, but that's just me on my soapbox.
I think
Yeah.
you're spot on, because I mean, I think that in a lot of ways we're pitted against each other, right? It's a
Yes.
competition for everything, competition for men, competition for pay, and I think that that kind of creates an environment in our minds that this is how it's supposed to be, and it's absolutely not how it's supposed to be. That's one of my strengths. I believe in advocacy. I believe that if you could say a
Yep.
positive word for somebody, regardless of who they are, male, female, black, white, blue, green, or orange, whatever they are, I
Yep.
think that's a God-given blessing that someone
Right.
gets from you. And if you're sitting back holding back, because I'm afraid you're going to get further than I am, it's the old thing that says the more you give, the more you get, the more you do for others, the more that comes back to you. And that's been
Yeah.
my
So,
philosophy.
but if you think about it, though, a guy can wear the same suit every day for a week and just change the shirt,
Right,
maybe the tie. We as females, we have to have outfits.
right,
And if you wear that same outfit within a two-week time period, then that they'll be talking about you.
right.
And we need to change those things. So
Absolutely.
I actually, over the last few years, I went to a black shirt and black trousers and a jacket.
Yep,
And the only thing that changes is that jacket. I
yep,
mean, because it's too hard not to have a uniform, and the guys have a uniform.
absolutely.
We need a uniform. So I know it's a little boring. My sister says I have the most boring clothing in the world. And I'm like, well, at least I don't have to wear scrubs to work. Okay. She's a dentist. But
But she has a
anyway, so
uniform. She has a uniform.
she has a uniform. She's wearing her scrubs. And I
Absolutely.
think I'm very fortunate too to come from a very strong mother. And I'm the sixth child. And my father was very, very ill my entire life. He was a brittle diabetic. And I learned to be independent. I worked since I was like 13 years old. And I don't know what it is not to have a great work ethic and to really work. But don't really have time not to, you know, not to do all the good things. But I'm not perfect by any means, and there are people I'm sure that how you're judged by your enemies.
Yep, absolutely.
But I, you know, anyway, I just think it's real important to help each other and to be kind. That you be kind, you know.
I
Can't
100%
stress
agree.
that enough.
I agree with you so much. And, us having this chat today is going to help a lot of people to hear these kinds of
I hope so.
conversations, that we're not competing with each other, that we are supportive of each other.
Yeah,
What is that old Jewish tale that, when they came for these people, I didn't speak up. And then when they came for me, there was nobody there for me. I mean, I think that's the
yeah,
mentality that women should have. If you can see a woman get ahead or succeed, that means that there's a chance you can get
yes,
there too, as opposed to,
yes,
saying, okay, well, I don't want her to get ahead because, that's not the right way, and
yeah,
I think that we have to really figure out how to change that mindset, because we
yes.
always see this thing as a competition. What are we competing for?
I don't know. I would also add that if you are in a meeting and you look around and everybody looks like you're in the wrong meeting.
I said that on LinkedIn
Don't
the other day.
don't don't self-segregate. That's not good. That is not good because companies make a lot more money and are a lot more profitable if there is diversity in their workforce,
Absolutely.
and then you don't have that group think,
Right, right.
and you're not telling people bless your heart.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I can't stress that one enough because learning about somebody else's culture, even things like what kind of food they eat. Oh, I love that. I love to learn, and some of the food is just fabulous. But anyway,
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah,
I think diversity is the key to success as we go forward, especially with
yes,
emerging technologies. So when you think about the biases that exist in some of the current technologies, so if you live in a negative zip code or a positive zip code, what you pay in the negative zip code may be higher than what you pay in the positive. Getting a bank loan, all of these things kind of have this with
yeah,
algorithms is the new driver of our future, with machine learning and people being threatened by what could come of this, what happens to them in the future. First retooling, right? So don't be afraid to
yeah,
learn something new. If you didn't do it before, go learn how to do it now. Because as so many people have said, there are going to be tons of jobs are going to be automated, and people are going to be
yes,
displaced. So be prepared to be displaced. Go learn something new, get a new
hmm
skill. In your vernacular, change your uniform. Put on some stuff.
yes,
So that you can
absolutely,
go to the next
absolutely,
thing. And I think that, if diversity is not there, if companies aren't willing to hire people that are less experienced, if they're not willing to hire people who are black or brown, or, if they're not willing to,
yeah,
look at their leadership, so when you look around the room, when you were talking about that earlier, I mean, when you look at the leadership, if everybody on that screen is white or male or, it's narrow,
or it can be they all be black too. I mean,
exactly,
I've
whatever,
worked
whatever
there.
it is. Yep.
Yeah, whatever it is, it needs to be diverse. I
It
mean,
needs
I
to
live in a townhouse community here in Atlanta, and from house to house, there's so much diversity. I mean, I put myself out in that kind of a world. Now, my sister lives in an area of the country where there's no diversity.
yep.
So she comes here and she's like looking around going, what the heck? But I'm serious, but I think it's important to expose yourself to all the wonderful things that are out there. And we're all unique and we all have special gifts. Not everybody has the same set of gifts, but that's good too.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for chatting with me today. This has been
thank
phenomenal. And
you.
I hope you'll chat with me again in the future, because I think there's
Yeah,
still so much
sure.
to learn. As I said earlier, as soon as the video converts, I'll send you a link and you can
Okay.
look at it. Let me know if I may upload it. And
Okay.
I'm going to end the chat now, but I have a question for you. So don't
Okay.
go away yet.